What up, everybody? BMF Season 3, Episode 6, titled Casualties of War, started off with the casualties of Episode 5 and everyone attending their funerals. And Meech showed up to the funeral of Lil Milt, who was killed in the Techwood shootout. With the plan to plant a seed of division between Remy and his number 2, Claude, attempted to make peace and form an alliance with the Techwood crew. But this infuriated Remy, and he told Claude, from now on, it's on sight. But Claude would rather get his crew to come up working with Meech than to continue the war, just as Meech expected. Now Meech plans on using Claude to take out Remy from the inside, then after that, use Techwood to take out the MKs. While Meech was planting seeds, T was back in Detroit burying Diesel, and Bryant was across the road on the other side of the graveyard burying Kevin. Bryant then proceeded to walk over to Diesel's funeral, letting them know his kid shouldn't be in the ground. Notice Bryant isn't taking any responsibility for Kevin's death, but instead is placing the blame on everyone else, when really he's actually to be blamed the most. First, for suppressing a murder weapon that Kevin used to kill another kid in cold blood. So Kevin wasn't exactly completely innocent either. But then when he got sent to juvie, Bryant only made things worse by choosing to work with Henry to get Kevin protection instead of working with T, ultimately costing Kevin his life. But after Bryant shoved T into Diesel's grave, T later called Meech, letting him know that he's tired of all this beef and he's afraid that his crew would move on because of all the bodies. But Meech told T that they had nothing better to move on to, and that T had to pay the price to be the boss, what T referred to as paying care on. But Meech told T that he can't take any of this stuff with him, and by looking out for his crew, that's how he would manage morale. Keeping in mind, we've seen Meech do this in Atlanta when the stash house was robbed. He sold his Rolex collection to put money in all his people's pockets. So then we see T do something similar by getting his crew Piston jackets and tickets to a Pistons game. Then we see T trying to pursue peace by making a truce with Henry as he went to her gambling spot to talk to her. But Henry wanted nothing to do with making peace with T and let him know that her whole purpose in life was about wiping BMF off the map. And while T was there, Henry and her cousin peeped the eye contact between T and Diz, and they realized that that's how T was getting his info, by having Diz get close to Henry. Because of that, at the end of the episode, Henry lit Diz on fire with a flamethrower. Keeping in mind that T and Diz were very close friends, they knew each other ever since Lil Leak. T even called Diz his A1 since day one this episode, and Diz was also about to open a burger restaurant. So a big question is, will T take responsibility for Diz's death? Because he's the one who put him in the position in the first place. He should have known that wasn't going to end well. Or will he be like Detective Bryant and just blame everybody else? Prior to this, after being rejected by Henry, Markeisha then let T know that Henry was a second-generation dealer who has to answer to her father. So T arranged a meeting with Blaze to see if he could talk some sense into Henry. And Blaze let T know that the politics of family was messy, but he would try to talk to Henry. Then Blaze did talk to Henry at what I believe was Detective Amberson's repass, either though I don't think they actually said what that event was. And he let Henry know that she was throwing away their whole business model. And because she killed a cop, they were no longer going to be looking the other way on their business deals. And they were no longer going to be exclusively supplying political events. Then he let Henry know that she needed dead the war with T and BMF, even going as far as threatening Henry, telling her if she doesn't, that their arrangement may have to come to an end. And we know already that Henry only added fuel to the fire by killing Diz. But she then went on to tell her father that respect is earned. Now this is definitely something that only an entitled rich kid who grew up privileged would say to their parent. On the other hand, Blaze has a liking for T, saying that he respected his business model of nonviolence and more money. Also in this episode, because Amberson getting killed in episode 5, Bryant was fired from the police force, and when Jen mentioned the name of Henry to the captain, she was then suspended. So it's obvious that the captain has ties to Blaze and suspended Jen to dead her investigation into Henrietta. And after Bryant was fired from the police force with literally nothing left to lose, he went after Henry John Wick style. But when he went busting into her office, Blaze was waiting on him. So they taught Bryant a lesson by knocking him out and dumping him off somewhere in the middle of nowhere. Getting me back to Claude versus Remy. The seeds that Meech planted at the funeral worked because Claude later talked to Remy about Meech, saying he stepped to us like a man. But Remy saw Meech's agenda and told Claude Meech stepped to them like a stake in the grass. Remy even went on to tell Claude that Meech still has debts to avenge with them, not knowing that Meech plans on using Claude to avenge those debts. And also told Claude that if they work with Meech now, they'll be stuck forever. Ironically, when Meech first talked to Claude at the diner, Meech's whole selling point was that they would be partners forever. And now Claude used Remy's plan to unite the Atlanta crews, but instead of going against BMF, they would be under BMF and take out Remy. This would make Claude the king of Atlanta, as Meech plans to elevate to God status. Meech also told Claude if they do this for him, that he would wipe their slate clean from the robbery that they pulled in episode 3. Letting him know that Remy got to go, that this whole war mentality is costing innocent children their lives. This episode we also got another look at the Red Dog Task Force, who we were first introduced to in episode 1 as they showed up and beat down Remy and Claude. This time they got a hold of Duffy. Meech was worried about Duffy, who is now serving as his number 2, saying that he was on the run, meaning he has warrants in Detroit. So if they would have started talking across state lines, we wouldn't have been seeing any more Duffy for a minute. At the same time, Tina's boyfriend Lazuli also got picked up by the cops and wasn't released from the drunk take within the 48 hours he was supposed to be released. When Meech told Angel about this, she said Greenie also been missing and that she would try to find out more information at the club. Come to find out, Greenie had been picked up by the Georgia Bureau of Investigation and had snitched on Meech for shooting Big Mike. When Lazuli got out the drunk take, he also let Meech know that they were trying to get him to snitch on Meech about Big Mike's murder also. Because of that, Meech now has to go MIA for a season and is now headed to St. Louis to meet up with Jay Pusher. Keep it in mind that this is something Meech has already done before in season 2, fleeing Detroit to Atlanta when Denise got arrested with those bricks. The problem was Angel wanted to go with Meech, but Meech told her that he was going alone, most likely because the fact that he doesn't know exactly what he's going to be walking into and can't be worried about looking out for her at the same time. But this caused Angel to tell Meech don't be surprised if she moves on by the time he gets back, and that she heard that Glock pays well. So Meech put Angel at his house, letting her know that he could never trust her, basically telling Shorty that she's going from calamari back to fish sticks. Shout out to Lil Wayne for that line. But one problem Meech might face when he returns to Atlanta is the HOA. Stepping to him twice this episode, the second time with papers telling him if he doesn't pay the fines and get his house up to standard within 30 days, they'd be putting a lien on his house. And before Meech left to St. Louis, he went to the diner to meet up with Claude one last time, who is now ready to follow through with Meech's plan, but looked worried when Meech said he was leaving town. So if Claude doubts Meech, it might give him second thoughts about turning on Remy. Getting me to the birth of Terry's second child. When LaWanda went into labor, T was with Markeisha and Lucille was with Maurice. Keep it in mind, earlier in the episode, Maurice called the house in front of Charles, and Lucille had Nikki lying, saying that he had the wrong number. They also show Lucille telling T to lie when he was a kid in season 1, lying to his teacher about why he'd been missing school. It was really because they had their power cut off. But when Wanda went into labor, Nikki called Maurice when the ambulance didn't show up. She also tried calling in Paige and Terry, but he had left his phone and beeper next to Markeisha, who turned them both off. Just as I was starting to like Keisha after she helped T with CPS and she told him about Blaze. She had to go and do some more toxic stuff like this. But T got the call at the restaurant and the cook gave him the message. Then as Maurice was delivering Wanda's child, Charles walked in from work to see Maurice, and he wasn't happy about this at all. Then T came in after his child was already born, telling Wanda he was working, but she wanted nothing more to do with T because his cook sold him out and told Wanda T was with Markeisha. This caused T to get upset, and Maurice to call T's son, trying to get him to calm down. As T walked out, Charles straight up told Maurice that Terry wasn't his son, And while all this was going down, Nikki was watching the whole thing and she rushed to her room to take the birth control pill, seemingly traumatized by the whole situation. And there you have it. Leave your thoughts, theories, and predictions in the comments.